Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. Today's episode, we're going to be doing another Terrapin Brewing Company beer review. This is another sampler pack they have out now. This one, although it does have a Krunkle in it, is not an entire Krunkle series. This is a sampler pack out called their IPA Survival Kit. Terrapin is based out of Athens, Georgia. So we're going to be starting today with the Up High. This is a standard IPA, and this one is Citra hopped, and 5.9% ABV on this one. And then we're going to finish off with the Krunkle. This one is Señor Krunkles, Tropical Agave IPA, and this one clocks in at 6.5% ABV. So looking forward to jumping right into another Terrapin sampler. They put out a solid product, and I've only had the one of these before, so I'm really excited to see what these other three on the final three I'm going to review here that are new to me are all about. So without further ado, let's jump right in. All right, so the next beer we are moving on to is the Up High. This is the Citra Hop IPA, standard IPA, clocks in at 5.9% ABV, so right in a normal average range for an IPA. Gonna get this one cracked. All right, and get this one poured in. Gonna try not to make the mistake I did on the last one and get a little aggressive out of the gate, because that one formed a little bit bigger head than I would have liked. This is looking good. Now we can speed it up a little bit. Gosh, I still got a bit overzealous. One of these days I will master the art of pouring a beer for that perfect head from a can or a bottle. At any rate, the head on this one formed very much like the Session IPA, the Recreation Ale we just reviewed here. This one, very much the same thing. It's got a really nice, tight, very foamy looking head, though if you can see the side profile perhaps, you can see that the bubbles underneath are quite large, so this is not going to take that long for this head to settle itself back down. Appearance-wise, this actually looks almost identical to the Session, so probably some very lightly roasted malts in here, maybe some classic Pils malts, but it's only got the most slight tinge of an orange hue to it. It's predominantly a nice golden yellow, which it's a very lovely looking IPA. Gonna get in here and give it a sniff. Yeah, that smells very, very good. That smells like a classic Citra hop based IPA. Citra is just one of those hops that you know it right away when it's in your beer. I presume it's named, based on the elements that it kind of generates in your beer. Very, very citrus forward aroma. The nose on this is so citrusy. And it's a pungent hop. Its aroma is very pungent. It's also a very high alpha acid content hop, so it's a really good bittering hop, which for an IPA, that's what I personally look for. You've heard me say it before, the whole New England juicy IPA craze, that is not for me. I don't dislike them. They're perfectly fine. I've had plenty and they're good beers. But for me, that's not what I want in an IPA. I want hop, 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 bitter, bitter, bitter. So a classic standard IPA with the Citra hop, this sounds like a recipe for success in my book. So the head is already settled quite nicely, though it's holding true. So let's jump right in, give this a sip, and see how hop forward this one is. Yeah, that's nice. That's a nice beer. This definitely has much more substance to it than the Session IPA that I just sampled, as it should. 1.2% higher ABV, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it really, really is, because it's not just the alcohol content that is the difference between the beers. Even though they're IPAs, it's got to do with a greater amount of fermentables in there, which lends many different characteristics into the beer. This absolutely has more body and a much more viscous mouthfeel, even though it's only 1.2% higher ABV. that added extra malt that went into the grain bill before they brewed this beer really makes its presence known. That's why I say you have a Guinness draft. Maybe that's 4 or 5% ABV. I don't know. It's been a while since I've had one. Maybe let's call it 4.5 to 5.5%, somewhere in that range. And then you have an Imperial Stout. The difference between those two beers, while the ABV isn't necessarily vastly greater, I mean, if you're going statistically, sure, it's significant. Double the ABV, maybe a little under, maybe a little over, maybe very much over. But if you're just going by the numbers of the ABV, it doesn't tell the whole story. It's about what went into the beer to get it to that point. And, you know, there's also tons of different things you could put into beer that are going to give a lot more breath, but aren't going to give as many fermentables or raise that ABV as high, but they're going to add a lot more body, a lot more mouthfeel, a lot more aroma. So beer is such a fine art, and it's a science, and that's the beauty of craft. Like these craft brewers, they're just going for it, and I absolutely love it. And this is another great example. Have I had Citra Hop IPAs that are far more pungent than this? Yes. If you're a hophead, yes, you will enjoy this. Is this on the scale of a Ruination Stone Ruination IPA? No, it isn't, but I don't think it's supposed to be. I think that this is an IPA for the masses that also happen to be hop heads and know about hops. And Citra is a well-known one, and it gets used a lot for good reason. The aroma is fantastic. It smells so good. And now that the head has settled down just a little bit, give it a little jostle. You get that strong citrus, but I can also smell a slight carameliness in the malts. Even though it doesn't come through in the flavor, the aroma it comes through. So gonna have another sip here. Yeah, it actually does come through. It's on the front. You do get a kiss of caramel. It's not like a rich, deep caramel or toffee flavor like you get with a lot of double IPAs and triple IPAs, but it's a nice little touch on the front. And then you get that nice bitterness, and it's very clean from the Citra hops. I don't think they went overboard. They didn't get overzealous. They just made a nice classic IPA, and they used the Citra hop and let the Citra hop do its thing and be the base kind of star player in this beer. And it's very, very well balanced. It's got a nice medium body to it. It's got a really, really silky, silky smooth mouthfeel. I mean, it is just silky smooth. It actually, the mouthfeel on this puts me in mind of a cream ale, which for an IPA that's rare, but I really enjoy it. Texturally, it's very nice in the mouth. The finish isn't super long, which you would maybe expect with a Citra hop, but I think that they reined it in to aim for balance as kind of their goal with this beer. And if indeed my suspicion is correct, then they absolutely nailed it. This is ridiculously well balanced. This is an IPA that's not so overpowering. You could grab this on a hot summer day, and even though it's an IPA, I think you would feel like your thirst was quite quenched. It's indeed very enjoyable. It's not over the top. This is just good, honest IPA, and I am a fan. I'm going to take my time and finish enjoying this and work up my ratings, and then we will move on next to our final beer of the bunch on this Terrapin IPA Survival Kit sampler review. That is the Señor Krunkles Tropical Agave IPA, which clocks in at 6.5% ABV, and I'm really excited. I've never had an Agave IPA. I've had it in other beers, and agave is a fantastic ingredient. I'm very much looking forward to it. So I'll come up with ratings, and we will be right back. All right, wrapping up today's review of the Terrapin Brewing Company's IPA Survival Kit is the Señor Krunkles. This is a tropical agave IPA, which just the name alone gets me really, really excited. Agave as an ingredient in beer is fantastic. And I've never had an agave IPA and tropical, so I assume there's some kind of tropical fruit in here. 6.5% ABV on this one. I'm just going to take a quick peek on the can, see if they mention the fruit that's in here. Yeah, subtropical flavors of prickly pear and they pair that with agave nectar. So this ought to be a really nice IPA. Terrapin is a really great brewer. They brew a lot of great beer, and their IPAs in particular are really well balanced, and they're kind of very approachable IPAs in my opinion. Okay, maybe Hopsecutioner aside, that one's a little on the bolder end, but I'm really excited to see what this has in store. Judging on my pours on the first, the last several that I poured in this glass, I'm going to be a bit more gentle on this one so I don't get quite as ridiculous a head. We want a head to form, but we don't want that massive, massive pillowy blanket of foam that I've been getting. So far so good. I'm going to give it a little more agitation down the middle. That right there. That's what I want to see from a can. That was a great pour into this glass. See, yeah, practice makes perfect, as they say. All right. So, appearance-wise, this looks, I mean, again, almost identical to the Recreation Ale Session and the Up High. If anything, I think it actually is a little more true golden yellow with no real hints of amber. It's just a nice, beautiful golden yellow color. It is effervescent, though it's got a little slower speed to the bubbles. It's like really fine, almost champagne-like bubbles coming up, and they're moving rather slowly. So I think maybe there's some nice viscosity to this beer. 6.5%. I wouldn't be surprised. You add in prickly pear and agave nectar to a nice malt base, you're going to get some extra fermentables in there, and that's going to boost up the ABV and kind of boost up kind of the backbone of the beer. It's a lovely beer. The head looks beautiful. I mean, it formed beautifully. That is textbook for me. That's what I want to see. Let's give it a sniff. It doesn't have a particularly pronounced aroma. I don't know what hops they have in here, but I'm really having a heck of a time picking up any discernible activity on the nose. I mean, just a slight hint. You can tell it's a beer. You can tell it's a IPA, and you can tell there's something in there, but you can't really pick out anything individually. It's got a very, very weak aroma. But let's not let this dissuade us from enjoying this beer. So I'm going to jump right in and have a sip. Oh, that is so good. Oh man. Oh, Terrapin, bravo. Oh my gosh, that is so good. Okay, if you saw my review that included the Taxman Brewing Company's Mezcal Barrel exemption, this reminds me of that beer, and that was aged in mezcal barrels, which is a liquor that's made from the agave plant. Agave is a very distinct flavor. Indeed, it's got this earthiness, it's got this bitterness, but it's also got this sweetness. It's almost alchemical in the way that it produces its flavor profiles. It tastes very of the earth is the best way I could describe it. And I don't mean earthy in the same way that hops can be earthy, but it's a flavor you've got to try, and it's got this inherent sweetness to it. And even when it's not sweet, the flavor that you get from agave kind of triggers in your brain sweet. This is what's happening right now. This is not a sweet beer. There's not a hint of sweetness, but I can taste the agave, and it's triggering in my brain sweet, which is a very interesting kind of mind trip as you're experiencing a beer. And this is a good one. This is a really good one. This is really good. I'm really pleased with this. Mixing prickly pear, which is the fruit of another cactus, with the agave plant, which, if you're curious about in-depth knowledge on what exactly agave is, check out one of my Tavour reviews where I did the mezcal barrel exemption from Taxman Brewing, where I go fully into detail as to what exactly agave is. Suffice to say, it's not a single species of plant. It's any number of plants in a broader category. But yeah, that's such a good flavor. It pairs so well in an IPA. And the same thing's happening in this that happened in the Taxman exemption that I reviewed several episodes ago, in that it's imparting this caramel quality to the beer, and it's imparting this almost kind of buttered popcorn flavor to the beer, and then you get this earthiness and you get this sweet sensation while not being sweet, and you get this nice bitterness. And this is so well balanced. This is such a tasty beer. I wish you could have a sip of this. Honestly, I do. God, that is so good. That is so good. Terrapin, well done. Man, if you've never had a beer that features agave as an ingredient, I absolutely encourage you to seek one out. If you can find it, just grab it. I don't care what the style is. Just grab a beer. If it says it's been either aged in mezcal barrels, that would be the most common since that's the liquor, or if somebody added agave, or if it was aged with some kind of agave or agave extract or syrup or that whole actual parts of the plant, or brewed with it. Doesn't matter. Just get your hands on it. It's such a great, unique flavor. And it works so well in beer. I love it. I love it. I think I'm going to have to get my hands on some agave for some homebrew, because honestly, I've had a few beers with agave now, and they have all been like this. It's such a unique flavor. It's such a beer experience. I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. Nitty gritty. The flavor is amazing. The appearance is amazing. The head was amazing, and it's still holding its own, even though I've really done dirty on this beer in this glass. The body, it's got a little more weight to it, as you would expect. 6.5. It's got more fermentables. The mouthfeel, again, is very, very silky smooth. And it's ridiculously well balanced. Everything plays its part in this beer. Kind of takes you on that trip. You get the bits that the malts that they used, and then that very interesting characteristic that agave imparts in beers with that caramelly and that buttered popcorn, and that comes on heavy up front, and then it bursts open into the bitters. And it's not pungent, punch you in the teeth, but it's these nice earthy bitters, which is, I mean, tied for first place in my favorite bittering profile. I like the classic West Coast style, the pine tar resinous, just sticky, piney, in-your-face pine, and then I like deep, rich, pungent, earthy hops. This is of the earthy variety. And the way that it pairs with the agave, because it gives this mimicked sweetness, it starts to open up other profiles in the beer that almost puts me in mind on the back end of like maybe a ruby red grapefruit, which I know there's nothing about this beer that says ruby red grapefruit. They didn't use it in there. The hops that they used didn't impart that. But the way this all comes together, it's such a trip. You get savory, you get sweet, you get bitter, you get earthy. I mean, this is just taking me for an absolute flavor sensory ride, and I am loving every minute of it. Bravo, Terrapin. This one's fantastic. I absolutely love this beer. First time I ever had it. This is my unadulterated reaction, and I hope it's coming through on the camera just how much I'm enjoying this. All right, folks, I'm going to take my time, get my full scores worked up on this, and when I wrap up, I will come back. We will go through all four top to bottom and get the rankings, and I will be back in just one moment. All right, now that we have gotten to enjoy all four of these beers, we're going to go through and get their full rankings, starting with the up high. This was the Citra Hop IPA. This one clocked in at 5.9% ABV. The aroma on this one mimicked the first two beers, 8 out of 10. The taste, I really liked it, and I thought it was well above average, but being that it was Citra hopped, I thought that the hop presence could have been a little more forward, so I just gave it a 7 out of 10. For the body, again, it was nice. 5.9%. I expected it with that many fermentables to have a little more substance like you get from some bigger IPAs, bigger ABV IPAs, but still above average. I gave it a 7 out of 10. The mouthfeel on this one, this is where kind of the mouthfeel and the body differ by quite a substantial margin, and in a good way. The mouthfeel on this was just so rich and silky smooth. It was exactly what I want in an IPA, and it was just really, really enjoyable. I gave it just 1 point shy of perfection for a 9 out of 10. The finish on this is one where it did let me down a little bit. It was still above average in my mind, but being that it's Citra hopped, knowing what Citra hops do, having brewed with them, having had many, many IPAs that feature Citra hops, I thought the finish was a bit weaker and shorter than I would have liked. So I still gave it above average. I gave it a 6 out of 10. Head and retention, the exact same as the prior two, 9 out of 10. The appearance on this, I thought it was almost perfect for an IPA. I gave it a 9 out of 10, and I thought it deserved it. The balance on this, very, very, very well-balanced beer. If I'm thinking about what makes a well-balanced beer, it's how is all of the parts that go into making the beer, how are all the parts that go into making the beer, how is it that they interplay? Is one more dominant or subservient to the other? And in this case, I thought they created a very well-balanced beer. While I would have liked it to have a longer finish and a more Citra hop forward profile, the balance was there, and I gave it a 9 out of 10, well earned. Filling in the intangible, I gave it a 7. It's still above average, certainly well above average, but again, it comes back to being a Citra Hop IPA. I just want a little more Citra Hop presence in mine, but still a good score. Finally, as an example of the style, I also gave that a 7 out of 10, and that brings the total on the up high to a 78 out of 100. And that brings us to our final beer, the most interesting beer of the bunch for sure. That's the Señor Krunkles Tropical Agave IPA, 6.5%. And as you probably recognized from my reaction when I was trying this for the very first time, I absolutely love this one. Jumping right in, the aroma. This one is an outlier in the bunch because it's its only failing category. Honestly, it was so weak, it was barely detectable. I gave it a 2 out of 10 for the aroma. Taste, complete 180, absolute bang on, loved it. Perfect 10 out of 10. Well deserved for my money. I'm telling you, if you've never had a beer that's either got agave in it as an ingredient, aged on agave, or aged in, say, mezcal barrels, which is an agave-based liquor, I highly recommend it. It's such a unique flavor profile, and it adds so much depth and character to the beer. It's just unbelievable. I do recommend you seeking them out. It's really nice. The body on this one was very, very nice indeed. Had a big substance to it, well above average. I gave that an 8 out of 10. The mouthfeel, I actually gave even a point higher. I gave it a 9. It was just so nice. It's exactly what I wanted in an IPA. Just shy of perfect. The finish on this, I mimicked the mouthfeel. I gave it 1 point shy of perfection. It was so long and so layered. There's really not a lot they could have done to extend it. It's really only by virtue that I've had other similar beers that are just that little bit better that I had to dock at the point, but still exceptional finish, exceptionally long, and very, very complex. The head and retention, exact same score as the prior three. I gave it a 9 out of 10. These all poured and held true very, very long. The appearance on this one was lovely. This was just 1 point shy of perfect for me. I gave it another 9 out of 10. For the balance, this was such a well-balanced beer. You could actually taste the malt bill. You could taste the hop. You could taste the prickly pear. And you could taste the agave and all the different character traits that brought to it. I gave it a perfect 10 out of 10 for the balance. Feeling and intangible, as you might expect, my subjective category, I absolutely freaking loved it. I gave it another perfect 10 out of 10. Finally, as an example of the style, agave beers, they're not easy to find, but they're absolutely worth it. And this is one of the better ones I've ever had. I gave it a 9 out of 10. That brings the total score on Señor Krunkles to an 85. So all in all, we're only looking at a 7-point spread across all 4 of these beers, and all of these are well above average. I really enjoyed this IPA Survival Kit, and I think that they named the sampler pack appropriately. If you're into IPAs, you could survive on these. These get the job done, and they were all excellent, excellent examples of an IPA in their various iterations. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, I do thank you for tuning in today. We are a growing channel, so please, if you enjoyed this content, found some value, consider liking and subscribing. And if you want to keep in the loop when our videos go live, we're dropping multiple videos per week. You can click the notification bell and it will let you know right when our videos go live. Certainly, if you have another fellow beer enthusiast or lover in your life, feel free to share this content with them. And we really do appreciate it. And hopefully you found some value, at least found it mildly entertaining. But until next time, folks, we thank you for tuning in. Keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.